now, the DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia on the Call 360 Network. And here's your host, Claudia Merandi.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. We will be taking calls 20 minutes into the program. I'm just waiting for some audio to come up on the screen. I'm not sure if Brian has been able to get me on audio just yet. We just ask that you keep your questions related to tonight's topic. You can visit us, you can watch this live and comment on YouTube, and you can call us in at 415-403-2715. Quick reminder, as we protest on May 22nd at most capitals, don't forget to visit don'tpunishpainrally.com to find your venue, and you can order a t-shirt. We just ask that you protest with dignity, and we're going to bring on tonight's guest. I've not met this person, but I just felt like he was a really good person. From the first time I saw Mark Ibsen post something on social media, I was like, I like this guy. I want to know this guy. So welcome to the program. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Claudia. I'm great. How are you?
Good. First off, happy birthday.
Thank you. And happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we're going to get right to it. So, Mark, you are beloved throughout the community. You have a huge support system. And, the first thing I wanted to discuss with you, I noticed that you recently got back from Greece. You do some missionary work. What was that trip all about?
We traveled to an island, Samos, in Greece, which is only about 1.5 miles from the coast of Turkey. Mm-hmm. And the Greek refugee crisis deepens as Europe does not accept refugees very easily anymore. So there's about 65 million refugees on the planet. A lot of them are sitting in Greece waiting to get into asylum in some country where they could be free. These people are fleeing trauma, rape, war-torn countries, drug dealers, and the Taliban, etc. So it is a big crisis in Greece. There's 5,000 people on the island I was at, and they were stuck there and challenged by health issues as well as emotional issues and PTSD. So it was quite a challenge to serve them, and yet it was an honor to be there for people who are in a situation that they're powerless over.
And did you go with other doctors, Mark, or was it just yourself with a group of people?
We were with a small NGO that's based in my hometown of Helena, Montana, called Hands On Global. And we've been providing medical care in India for the last 4 or 5 years. And we decided to expand our mission a little bit based on a request that we got. So we have gone to Greece a couple times. We've gone to the southern border of the United States. And we served at Standing Rock a couple of years ago during the dead of winter. So we just go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, does Hands On Global have a website where people can donate?
Yeah, it's Hands On Global, all one phrase, .org. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, you've got to, it's like there's so many doctors, and just you were there for quite a bit of time. And I said, oh my gosh, this guy's unbelievable. Now he's in Greece helping others. And you're back in Montana. You've been back home for quite some time. So, Mark, what type of physician are you? Are you a general practitioner? Do you have a specialty?
Whenever anybody asks me what kind of physician I am, my first response is really good.
Okay, I agree.
my training is long. I'm kind of long in the tooth. I turned 54 today. I did a family practice residency in Salt Lake City, Utah. Then I started emergency medicine practice and did that for 30 years. So for a while, I was board certified in both family medicine and emergency medicine. In 2010, I started an urgent care in Helena, Montana, the town I live in now. And that was active for 6 years. We saw about 11,000 patients a year, so about 66,000 patients total. And our clinic closed in December of 2015 under considerable pressure from regulators and three-letter federal agencies. So since that time, I've been traveling around the state of Montana doing cannabis recommendations.
Okay, so I know you had some problems with the medical board, and did you go to trial? Because it looks like you won your case, whereas many of these other doctors, they don't have a chance any longer. Did you want to discuss any of your case with us? What was the out?
I'm happy to.
So when did you first encounter problems with your medical board? And was it due to the prescribing issues, and how did they get in your office? I always, I'd like to break down a doctor's case.
I hired an employee as a favor to a friend, and of course, no good deed goes unpunished, right? And this employee was a chiropractor, and I had her taking X-rays and doing chiropractic care in my clinic, 2 for 1. She felt very strongly that I should not be treating patients in pain, at least not long term. I would have agreed with her if anyone else would have done it, but no one else would do it. So we started our clinic in 2010. Around 2011, patients started coming into the office with this kind of story. Well, I went to Dr. Burkholder, he retired, and now Dr. Wampler won't fill the same prescriptions. So people were being dropped with sudden tapers and sudden withdrawals, and they'd see me on a Friday afternoon, and I kind of felt it was my obligation to pick up the ball. I thought I would only have these patients for a short period of time, and then I would get them onto someone else. But at that point, everyone in Montana was abandoning treating pain, even the primary care doctors. So a lot of patients ended up with no place to go. And once you accept a patient in medicine, you have to keep them unless you say, I'm not going to see you anymore. So that left me with patients that instead of moving on, they were just coming to see me still. And they needed to see somebody, and if no one else would see them, then I would. So she complained about that to the Board of Medicine. She mentioned 9 patients in the complaint. And frankly, Claudia, I thought they were going to give me a trophy or a blue ribbon. I'm the kind of person who goes for stars from the teacher, all that stuff. And I thought I was doing the right thing by helping people get off their opiates. And I was quite successful at that. About 80% of my patients were able to wean off of opiates if we did it slowly and we provided cannabis or other modalities for them. So the board saw an opportunity, I guess, to have a scapegoat or someone they could criticize their care and publicize the fact that they don't want people to use too many opiates. So they ended up being outraged, actually, feigned outrage, I guess. But when we met, and it sort of puzzled me, and then they just kept after me, and I had to protest what they were doing to me. So we ended up with some hearings.
And you fought back, and you won.
Yeah, I fought back right away. I could tell that they either hadn't read my charts or they were using me for some other purpose.
Sure.
Because I knew and I could prove that my cases were well taken care of, that I was following the standard of care, and that my patients were actually improving and getting better. And again, out of 9 patients that she turned into the board, 7 of these patients were either off opiates or on a lower dose. So I thought if I could tell that story, they might actually ask me how I'm doing it, and then I could tell them. But they weren't interested in that. They were just interested in my scapegoat situation, and they just, there were headlines in the news about what a terrible doctor I was, and they questioned my sanity, and they really gave me no choice but to fight back. But I wasn't wishing for another well, let me put it this way. It was clear to me they were going to screw me in a dark alley. And so I determined that I was going to make them screw me in the public commons.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they'd do it, but they did. And so I recovered, but I immediately made my case public. And that's the difference. Most doctors, when they get their board after them, they're ashamed. They want to keep it secret. They don't want to have a negative impact on their reputation like I did.
Yeah.
And I thought I had the reputation that could withstand the attack. I didn't know how bad it was going to be, but I thought I could withstand this attack against me by going public. And it was humiliating and embarrassing, but at least I shared the humiliation and embarrassment with everybody in my community. And they showed up for me like unbelievably.
I read that somebody in your office, and this is so important because we try to do this for all the doctors. You had many people show up at your, the days when you were in court to show support for you. And that's imperative to do. That's imperative because, these are all human beings. And it seemed like you had a really solid support system there for you, which is, oh man, it's so important when, you're going up against the medical board. Mark, do you feel your medical board was trying to make an example out of you?
Yes.
Yeah. And did they focus their energies on any other doctors, or were they pretty much fixated on Dr. Mark Gibson of Helena? And they made sure it was in the media constantly, because when a medical board, along with the DEA, comes for a doctor, they want to leave nothing behind with the exception of the doctor's skeletal remains. And
yes.
It is so vile. It is so disgusting. And I think, where we are today compared to when you were going through your cases, you never discussed your medical board and the involvement that the involvement that the medical board has with the Department of Justice. And I think now that that's been brought, not in mainstream media, it hasn't been brought to light yet, but it will be soon. I can promise you that. So you win your case, for a lack of a better term, and you decide to no longer prescribe opioids. And was there a reason that you did that? Was it just too much for you and you just decided you wanted to go, stick with cannabis?
So that's a complicated scenario. And what I determined, the reason I quit prescribing opiates was to stay out of prison. They made it clear to me that they're going to take me out. The reason I was so clear about that is another doctor was impugned by the board soon after I was. And he's Dr. Chris Christensen from Florence, Montana, a couple hours away from me. The DEA raided his office, put up the yellow crime scene tape. There's lots of pictures and drama around it. The Board of Medicine suspended his license at this time. And they had no reason to do this other than the Board of Pharmacy basically called the Board of Medicine and law enforcement and asked them to investigate. And this was one of the first steps of their investigation. They hadn't really done much, and then they raided him. So Dr. Christensen had 800 patients on pain medication that he had inherited from the pain clinics in Missoula, Montana, and he was helping them in the same way I was helping the refugees I was seeing. His case got sticky for him because 2 of his patients killed themselves, and the DEA was building a case to criminalize that. Ultimately, for 2 years, he wasn't charged, and he got his license back after signing a bunch of paperwork and signing away some of his rights. And then he was getting ready to reopen when the local county attorney filed 400 felonies against Dr. Christensen. So that case was amazing. I looked at the charging document and tried to figure out how many patients it was, and it turns out it was 11 patients. So they charged him with 1 felony for every prescription he wrote for his patients. And some of those patients received 40 prescriptions or 60 over a period of 5 years. So it was a bizarre thing to charge him with so many felonies. And every time they mentioned a headline, the local papers would say, Dr. Christensen, 400 felonies. And what happened was everybody thought he was a criminal. And in fact, I assumed he was a criminal.
Sure.
And I didn't know him that well. I'd heard of him, but we hadn't met. And then one of his patients came to me in June of that year, and he was in fluoride withdrawal, and I realized that the DEA put him in withdrawal. So I actually found out about Dr. Christensen's practice by seeing 22 of his patients. And then those patients were later included in my case. So we were kind of twins about that. The Board of Medicine, I was apparently suspect by seeing another doctor's patients. Which is really weird, from a medical point of view. If another doctor screws up a patient, your job is to see that patient and get it right. So I was assuming his patients were going to be a mess, and they were fine. They were well taken care of, and they were on the prescription drug registry, and they were taking medicines from one doctor and going to one pharmacy if they could, and they were following all the rules. And it was just criminal what happened to him and his patients.
Yeah, well, that's what the media does, Mark. They sensationalize these cases, and they have these doctors go, they accuse these doctors of 682 counts. And, when you hear it, so now you're a doctor and you're thinking to yourself, wow, this guy had 600 something counts. That's what the media does. They plague your mind. They plague your brain. And they add to this further hysteria, this disgusting opioid hysteria that's sweeping the country. But, the way I look at it is some doctors don't want to prescribe opioids. So then other doctors will get the lion's share of the pain patients throughout the state. Take Mississippi, you'll have a handful of pain centers, pain management centers, and these doctors are prescribing. And it looks like copious amounts of pain medications to people, but that's because nobody else is prescribing. So then your medical board is focusing on you, and the DEA is focusing on you because, hey, look at all the pain pills that this pain management center is putting out. That's only because no other doctors in the state are prescribing, and these doctors still want to care for these patients. And then before you know it, you've got these bogus bullshit charges that are filled with nothing but lies, more lies. And the doctor gets charged with 800 counts. Actually, Mark, I've done murders as a court reporter, and my people that murdered people were never even charged with several, hundreds of counts like this. And now the news puts out this doctor prescribed 200,000 pills in 1 year into a layperson. You say, oh my God, that's a lot of pills, because it just happened with Dr. Smithers on the National Rally page. And before you know it, members like, oh, well, I did the math and this doctor was doling out this many. And Dr. Feldman came in. He said, look, people, pay attention. This is how it works. And then you've got to find a lawyer, because you're not going to find a law firm, because law firms are very difficult, hugely expensive, to fight against your medical board, to fight against the DEA. Many times these doctors will just plea to a lesser charge, hoping they can get away with, not get away, but not get sent to, they're getting sent to prison for life. I mean, Dr. Smithers was a young doctor. Dr. Henson, for life? What? How are we going to fix this? When does it stop, Mark? What's the first thing that comes to your mind and somebody says, Dr. Ibsen, what can we do to help the doctors? What do you say?
Well, wow, there's about 4 questions in what you just were talking about. So I think that's real powerful.
I'm multifaceted like that, so you're welcome.
Yeah, no worries. So the first thing you asked me, or the first statement you made that I want to respond to, is the thing about how the media is just publishing whatever they're handed. Now, granted, it sells papers to knock some doctor off the pedestal, and the 400 felony headline that Dr. Christensen had, or or the Dr. Ibsen's sanity is in doubt that we're in my town, those need to be countered. And so the first thing we've got to do as physicians and patients, I think, but the physicians have got to do this ultimately, is to disregard our lawyers' recommendation that we not talk to the media. Now, if you're charged with murder, you probably should not talk to the media. If you're charged with embezzlement, it's probably a good idea not to talk to the media. If you're charged maybe with being a child molester, maybe you shouldn't talk to the media. But if you're charged about being a bad doctor, everybody's going to assume you're a bad doctor if you don't respond to it. So my idea, and I guess I got to write a book about this or something, is that the doctors who respond vigorously and fight back, I guess it's like any other predator. If you resist a predator, they're going to say, that's too much energy. I'm going to go to the dying calf in the middle of the field instead of after this robust gazelle that's fleeing from me. So, maybe the thing to do is to get doctors prepared to say, hey, I am not the person that's being described here. This is not what happens. And my theory is that if you just let them punish you in the press, the next strategy that either the board or the DEA uses is to delay your case. They delayed Christensen's case for 2 years and then finally charged him. Well, you don't do that with a stabbing victim.
Sure.
You don't do that with other crimes. So they delay the case, and while that case is being delayed, the doctor's staff, family, and patients lose faith in them. And
Absolutely.
They begin to disappear as a crowd of supporters. And then the doctor is completely ashamed of everything that's happening. So doctors tend to isolate in those situations. They're shunned by their colleagues and shunned by everybody, essentially. And it's like an inquisition. I mean, it has religious qualities to it.
Sure.
So I think those are the two biggest things. Fight back with the media and communicate with your patients so that they can see that you're not the person that they're being told that you are.
Yeah. A psychiatrist was recently, not recently, but in the past year, he was raided in Rhode Island by an FBI agent, and he's a Suboxone doctor. And when the FBI, I didn't really like this psychiatrist, to be honest with you. I thought he was a pompous ass. And when the FBI went in his office, he said, "Oh, wow, I'm the good guy." And the FBI said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, I write Suboxone. And the FBI's like, "We don't give a shit." So they took his computer, they took everything away, and his lawyer said, "Do not talk to anybody." I said, "Let me tell you something. I'm not a lawyer, but if I were a doctor and the FBI just came in my office and took everything away from me and accused me of things that are untrue, not only would I be talking with the media, I would be hosting my own press conferences." And so many doctors are told by attorneys, "Oh my God, don't talk to the media." And I said, let me tell you something. I sat in a courtroom for 25 years. You absolutely get your story out to the media, because if you don't, you've already been presumed guilty before innocent in a court of law. And your case has been out there for 2 years, which means 2 million more people you're not going to be able to find jurors that are impartial if it goes before a jury. So I think it's super important to, keep that open line of communication and fight back. And the media at this point it's everyone's enemy. I really think the media should be held accountable for the suicides, for everything that they've done. We're going to open the phone lines up. If you have a question for Dr. Mark Ibsen, I know many of you love to speak with him. The phone number in the studio is 415-403-2715. So Mark, in your daily basis now, in your practice, it seems like you do a lot of work with veterans. Do you have a lot of veterans that are patients?
I do. I have an affiliation with a veterans support and training program in Missoula, about 100 miles from me. And I got involved with them when I thought I was going to lose my license. And I knew I was going to need something to do. And I ended up volunteering overseas and then volunteering with this veterans group. And, I help them get their medical marijuana cards and all that sort of thing, which is kind of the best thing for their PTSD. And veterans are feeling like they're not getting the service that they need. Part of that is that PTSD, in my opinion, is a spiritual conundrum, and it's not really responding well to pharmaceuticals. So the other political thing is that veterans feel like they're being ignored, and 22 veterans a day are killing themselves, and that's a low estimate, really. So we've lost more veterans to suicide than we did in any of the wars we've been in the last 20 years. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
So helping the veterans is something I really believe in. And I was born in 1955. We're celebrating my birthday, and I was 18, and I thought I was eligible for the draft in 1972 or 17. And I just missed getting a draft card by about 2 or 3 months. So I didn't have to serve, and I didn't have to run from Vietnam, and but my brothers did, and I know that my brothers in arms who went over to that country and defended our country, they deserve all of our respect, all of our love, and all of our support in trying to recover a normal life after everything they've been through.
Yeah. And, so many, when I advocate for a veteran in Rhode Island, I'm fortunate. I have Senator Jack Reed. I've got two, I've got Senator Whitehouse here and Senator Reed. But with my veterans, they'll call me and they'll say, I have to pick between a benzodiazepine or, my pain medication. And I said, you're not picking. We're going to file a constituency form. And, what that does, that allows Senator Reed to get into their file and get involved with their case. And we're usually effective that way. So I like to, have people keep an open mind to that. We do have an anonymous caller. Hi, caller. Are you there? I think we lost the caller. Do we have an anonymous?
Yes. Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm fine. Is this Claudia?
It is.
Yeah. Hi. This is Dr. Cheek.
Oh, hi, Dr. Cheek. Thanks for calling in. Doctor.
Oh, you're welcome.
That.
Huh? Go ahead.
Oh, I said I know you two know.
Hi, Linda.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. I just wanted to make
it to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on things that we need to do in order to bring this to people's attention. First off, everyone needs to read the book written by Ronald Libby called The Criminalization of Medicine. I just finished reading it, and I've been in this fight now for 3 years since I've come out of prison. And I just read it, and one of the things that I keep learning new things every day. But when I read Libby's book, one of the things I noticed was that everything that is happening today happened 20 years ago. And so basically we're repeating ourselves over and over. We need to learn from history. Part of the problem with society today is we don't learn from history. We keep repeating the same action and expecting a different result, and we're not going to get it. So first and foremost, I think people need to read Libby's book, because it will open your eyes to the fact that whatever we're complaining about today has happened over and over for the last 20 years. And I think what happens is, what I've seen is, just in the 3 years I've been in the fight, is people come on board and they get interested in fighting this, but they don't get anywhere and they drop out. And I think what the government's doing is basically just outlasting us. Sure. Dr. Myers was one of the oldest ones to participate in this. He's been participating since 2003. He is now deceased. Ronald Libby, I think, is really the first and foremost since he wrote a book in 2008, published it, and he's been studying it since 2000 about, is probably the most historic one in the fight. And I think we need to learn from him and maybe even go to him. I plan on going to him and actually saying, Ronald, what do you think? What direction should we take at this point? Because we're just simply repeating ourselves over and over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That book is That book is called The Criminalization of Medicine: America's War on Doctors, and that's by Ronald Libby, and that's also available on Amazon. I was looking at that book earlier today. I just have a very difficult time comprehending a lot of what I read because I'm not a doctor. And when I speak with doctors, I said, look, you have to break it down for me because you people have your own language. But Linda, you're so spot on about people dropping out because you feel defeated. And I can only imagine how a doctor must feel. They're going to lose their home, and they say, why should I continue to prescribe? And then you have advocates that want to drop out because you feel like, what's the end game? The end game is the government. They're not going anywhere. And I think they count on advocates dropping out. And I think they count on people. I don't think they've taken into account the whistleblowers that are out there. And I think we need more whistleblowers. Is Linda still with us? Linda, are you still there? Or did we lose her?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So Linda, let's give your organization a plug. So you're the founder of Doctors of Courage. And
Right.
How can people...
Doctors, and let's broaden that out. Doctors and patients of courage, because I only really created it for everyone, not just specifically doctors. I just came up with a name and tried to come up with an acronym that would stick in people's minds, and DOC would stick. So that's why I call it Doctors of Courage. But please, let's not leave out the patients. They're just as much in the in my web, should be in my website as doctors are. So it's a little bit broader.
And people can find you on your website. And the name of your website is?
doctorsofcourage.org.
Okay. And then they can also find you on Facebook. So everybody, be sure to visit Linda on her website as well. We always want to promote good people doing good things. Linda, thank you so much for calling in. Mark, do you have any friends that have been sent to prison? Mark,
I'm sorry, I did not copy that.
I'm sorry, have you lost friends that have been sent to prison, doctors who are now in prison, and are you talking with them? And I know Dr. Feldman has quite a few.
I've lost several friends that were patients who killed themselves and died from complications of chronic pain after they lost access to me. There's 6 of them. Dr. Christensen has been sentenced, but he is free pending his appeal, and there's been complications of that. They jailed him when he screwed up his appeal, and he was in jail in Missoula County and contracted MRSA and developed a meningitis and nearly died, and is just now getting recovery. So he's the only one that's been incarcerated that I'm familiar with. But yeah, it's tragic. It's now almost a doctor a day is going down. I think it's accelerating.
Sometimes when I tell people what's happening, I think people look at me like this conspiracy theory. But this past week, I had surgery on Monday, and I had 2 anesthesiologists, and one, I was talking with him, and another anesthesiologist came in. He ripped open the curtain, and he said, your port needs to be accessed. And he shuts the curtain, and he says to me, I know who you are. And I said, oh, shit, this could be good or bad because you're my anesthesiologist, and I don't know where we're going with this. He said, I know who you are. I follow you, and I'm going to get you the help that you need. He said, because this is bullshit. He's like, this is insane what's happening to doctors. And I said, what are you going to do about it? He said, I'm going to talk to you in another week, and we're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to start in the New England area, and we're going to work our way around the country. He said, and I said, are you going to give up? He says, I'm never giving up. He said, I'm not going to watch another doctor be crucified. So I feel it in my bones, Mark. It's happening. And I think people need to get that same feeling that I get, because for a random anesthesiologist to come in the day that I'm having surgery and say, I know what's happening. because a lot of doctors don't like to acknowledge this. Even my primary care physicians, it's almost like they whisper. We have a caller with area code 228. Hi, caller.
Hello?
Hi. Can
Hello?
you lower? Hi there.
Hello? Yeah,
Hi.
I called to make a comment to the doctor, Dr.
Okay,
Ibsen.
Could you turn down the volume in the background because it's...
Yeah, I can't find the channel changer. I'll just step outside. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this isn't why I called. This wasn't the primary reason, but I can't let it go. I think it's interesting that even a guy like this, who's obviously, got a strong mind, and he says PTSD is about spirituality or something, ask this guy if he's ever read Bessel van der Kolk or Judith Herman, because if he hasn't, he's out of his element.
Okay, well, you can actually talk to Dr. Ibsen because he's live with us. So
okay, well, that was one comment. I think he's totally off base and retrograde in what he thinks the nature of PTSD is. Okay. And have him come back once he's read Bessel van der Kolk or Judith Herman.
All right. Are you a pain patient? Are you a pain patient?
Okay, yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. Is he listening, or is it just you?
Oh, no, he's
sure
listening.
Am.
Oh, Dr. Ibsen's right with us.
Okay.
And who's speaking, please?
Raymond.
Hi, Raymond. Thank you
Raymond.
for calling into the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Still
Raymond.
There?
I am. We can hear you.
Okay. Any feedback on what I just laid out? Does he want to
I think you're about to ask another question about pain.
Does he maybe want to step back a little bit?
Well, let's address
and maybe do a little study on the topic instead of giving us ideas from 40 years ago.
Raymond, are you a person that suffers with pain? Are you what state are you in?
I'm in Mississippi.
Okay. And have you lost, are you a veteran? Have you lost access to pain management? Or are you just...
I'm glad you reminded me of why I called. Okay. I think something that's been left out of the public discourse as far as the doctors and pain, and I've been following your show today, and it's excellent, by the way, is the socialization of medicine and how doctors have less and less loyalty to the patient and more loyalty to HMOs, the VA, whoever's paying the bill. Because it doesn't matter if you're a plumber or an architect or an MD, your primary loyalty is going to be to whomever is paying you.
And hey Raymond, have you lost access to pain management?
With all due respect, Claudia, can you address the questions?
Sure.
Can you address my comment?
I could address
the
that, Raymond.
doctor address my comment?
All right, Dr. Ibsen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Raymond, I'm actually I have to agree with you 100%. That when I started in medical practice, I graduated medical school in 1980. When I started practice, it was you, your lawyer, me, and my lawyer in the room together. Of course, I was a resident, so maybe there was a resident supervisor or something. Now, in addition to those four people, there's the doctor's boss, because he's employee likely, the insurance company, the pharmacist, the pharmacy benefit manager, the regulator, whether it's the Board of Medicine or the DEA, law enforcement, and it's very crowded in the exam room today. And in fact, if I write this book, it might be called Your Doctor Doesn't Work for You Anymore. So I completely agree with you that the incentives are all screwed up, and that is complicating the sacred I'm going to use the term sacred. I know it's from 40 years ago probably, but the physician-patient relationship is sacred, and it's been disrupted by the invasion of all these other entities. So I couldn't agree with you more.
I'd go further and say it's been destroyed, not disrupted. I'd say it's been destroyed.
Okay, well then I'll agree with you about that. How's that?
Hey, Raymond.
Oh, and Claudia, I wanted to say one more thing about the doctors working for the CDC. I think they're brilliant. I think it's a privilege to work for the CDC, and I'm talking about the researchers. Yeah. And I think, the people making these policies, they're probably not even bona fide research type doctors. And, I was seeing a doctor for an ailment 40 years ago who was given the honor to work for the CDC, and this guy was brilliant, and it was such an honor and a privilege. He had a glow about him when he was asked to work for the CDC. So that I have a high opinion of the researchers. I think maybe the administrators at the CDC should be replaced. And finally, one last thing, I wouldn't let the MDs off the hook. And I'm not talking about the exceptions like Dr. Ibsen or Dr. Cheek. I think if they want to maintain their status in our society and they're on top of the heap, because who would you rather be on a deserted island with, an MD or Bill Gates? I would rather be with an MD. Yeah. So them not showing any kind of backbone collectively as a group is really tearing their relationship with their patients, which it's taken a couple hundred years to build.
Sure. I agree. Raymond, I can't thank you enough for calling in. Maybe you can get out to the protest in Mississippi on May 22nd. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Mark, I would love to see you write a book, and I love the title. Make sure you copyright that title before another doctor steals it from you. You know what I find? I'm all about that these days. I know how to protect myself. You know what I find? That all of your cases, all the doctors' cases have one thing in common. You all had a rat in your office. And that rat ratted you out, or you had competition that ratted you out. And when I first got into this with the doctors, I said, a doctor wouldn't do such a thing, because we have doctors held to such an esteem, right? We were raised, oh, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, and, doctors can do no wrong. But then every case, and I mean every doctor's case that I have touched, there was somebody in their office. You had somebody, you said you had a chiropractor, or there were patients from their past that the DEA got to. But a lot of the times it's competition that's, ratting out another doctor. And I was really astonished to learn this, but hey, it's competition, right? I mean, it's just so happens these doctors, they go for the jugular. They're going for your life. So Mark, how can we get the word out to doctors to collectively fight back? And you know what else I think? What's your opinion on this? It's impossible to have an outcome in a courtroom without an expert testifying. And Dr. Feldman, he was willing to testify for Dr. Smithers. Did you have an expert come in and testify on your behalf, or did you not get to that point?
Yeah, I did have an expert, and that's a great part of the story. I could not find anyone in the state of Montana to testify for me, because they were all so intimidated by the Board of Medicine.
Right.
So I found a recently retired doctor in my town who had practiced neurology, and he was willing to testify for me. And I wasn't even looking for testimony at the time. I was just looking for him to write a letter of support, and he ended up standing by me. And they tried to crucify him.
Sure.
But he was recently retired. Obviously, neurologists know about pain. And even in my hearings, they impugned his practice and complained that he didn't take care of pain patients directly. And that's because pain was managed by primary care doctors until quite recently. There was no specialty called pain. It was called neurology. The neurologist would see the patient and endorse the program, just like your cardiologist is going to tell your family doctor how to manage your hypertension. They're not going to manage your hypertension for you. So he was very qualified, and then they attacked him, and it was a while just getting him approved as an expert in the hearings. And then they threw out all of his testimony. Once I was exonerated, the Board of Medicine went back and reviewed and discounted everything he said and tried to wipe it off the record. Which is one of the reasons my case was cleared in district court, because essentially they deprived me of my due process rights. So it was a big battle over finding, agreeing on who was an expert who could represent me.
Yeah, that's the problem. I suggest that we have a bank of doctors who will volunteer their services and, act as experts, because as a retired court reporter, I can tell you this much. Nobody in Rhode Island ever testified against another doctor. So it was common. We always had to fly in doctors to testify. You could never find a doctor to testify against another doctor. But that is
not the case in Montana, Claudia.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, we've got a caller with the
Dr. Christensen.
Okay.
Good.
We're going to sneak this caller in. Area code 501.
Okay, go ahead.
Area code 501. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how to explain this because I think the world is just coming about on the whole cannabis issue.
What's your name, by the way?
So, Justin.
Oh, hi, Justin. Thanks for calling in. So you want to discuss cannabis with Dr. Ibsen?
No. Like, I think the world's already kind of accepted the idea that cannabis does have medicinal value,
Yeah. I guess.
Let's start there. Like, is that at least a given stance, or?
Well, it is for me.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my question is, like, when is the world going to start to evaluate cocaine as far as,
Well, I don't think we're going to have. Do you not believe that cannabis offers medicinal factors? I don't know much about cannabis.
No,
Mark, you do?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay.
I absolutely do. I've seen it firsthand, but I think the elephant in the room is cocaine, and the fact that cocaine has also shown and proven medicinal value, but I think the world just hasn't caught up to it. I mean, we're just now talking about cannabis being legalized and for medicinal purposes and things of that nature, but I mean, how long is it before cocaine's on the ballot?
Mark, what are your thoughts on cocaine being on the ballot for medicinal purposes?
Well, cocaine is already approved medically. It's a Schedule II prescription. It's actually used in ear, nose, and throat cases. It's been my go-to medication for nosebleeds for 30 years.
Wow.
So it is available medically, but I think you're right. I think most drug abuse in America is drug use. And rather than taking on the boogeyman of each individual drug and its benefits and lack thereof, I would like to see us approach the drug war, which has been a $2 trillion failure. I'd like to see that approach similar to what Portugal does, which is basically decriminalize everything and make every drug use a medical issue and not a law enforcement issue. When law enforcement and medicine are both trying to manage something, you get a tug of war like everybody's been experiencing with doctors in trouble and that sort of thing. So I think you're right. I think there's plenty of people who might be able to say that they use cocaine and don't abuse it. Of course, we hear about the cases of people who've abused it, and I see that in the ER as an ER doctor. Multiple cases of patients who took too much cocaine and had a heart attack and cardiac arrest. So it's just as harmful as any other medication when abused. But you've got a good point that there's probably some benefit in every drug that people are trying to get their hands on. And the battle may not be between right and wrong. The battle may be between the rich and the poor.
Mark, can I ask you a few questions about cannabis? In Rhode Island, we have phenomenal dispensaries. I actually advocate for one of the owners. His uncle, one of the owners' uncle, is very sick, and he said, "My uncle doesn't need. We're past cannabis. My uncle needs pain medication." And I said, "Well, let me get my card." It was a fairly easy procedure. So it's legal in Montana, or is it legal? So in Rhode Island, it's legal 20 minutes up the road, and you can have a small amount. What are the laws regarding cannabis in Montana?
Montana has a medical cannabis program. It is not legal recreationally, so you do need to have a medical card in order to obtain permission to use cannabis. Montana was, I think, the fourth or fifth state to pass a medical cannabis law in 2004. But given that Montana is a red state, and I think the dominant political winds here are red, it has been much more problematic in Montana, and maybe because, well, who knows why. But at any rate, the state legislature has attacked the medical marijuana program repeatedly and limited its development. So we actually had to pass a second referendum to get it reinstated, and now we're regulating it more. So we have about 30,000 patients in Montana that have medical cards. We have 100 million people in our population. The entire state, by the way, that's 100 million. 1 million. So 1 million people, 30,000 patients, that's 3% of the population that has access to medical.
We're going to bring in caller with the area code 818. Hi, caller.
Hello.
Hi there. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, my name is Marco. A friend of mine gave me this number and said that there was a doctor that could give me coke.
I beg your pardon. You're breaking up on. I'm sorry. What was your question?
I was just trying to get some coke.
Okay.
My friend said that to call in and.
All right. Yeah.
This is not the place for that.
No, you need to call 1-800-GET-A-LIFE. So, Mark, what's effective for a person with Crohn's disease? When I went to the dispensary, I was given THC, and after just a few drops, 3 or 4 drops, I was actually competing in my first fitness competition. And I remember this day like it was yesterday. And I said, this stuff doesn't work. And about 1 hour after just 3 drops, I thought the cast of The Love Boat was in my closet, and I went bananas. I said, oh my God. And I started to get really paranoid. So I would imagine with cannabis, it's a trial and error situation. So what are your patients? Do they go to the dispensary, or do you have recommendations as opposed to smoking or the oils or edibles? How do you go about the cannabis process?
So my thing is I don't have the time to help people with their trial and error. But you're right, it can be a bit of a trial and error. In other words, I'm asking my patients to find the right strain to take at the right dose with the right application at the right time of day. So it's likely that when you used 3 drops from your dropper and it didn't affect you soon enough, that you probably had A, an overdose, and B, the wrong strain, and another strain would have had a different effect on you. So it's all about going low and going slow. But what I tell my patients is that I want their cannabis dispensary to be their coach, sort of like Mr. Miyagi. And the thing that makes it different from a pharmaceutical is if I write you a prescription, it doesn't work out for you, you got to come back and see me. But if you have a recommendation for cannabis, your job is to design your own program that's going to work really well for you, and then keep designing it until it does. Yeah,
absolutely. And our dispensaries, I'll tell you, you walk in, it's set up like a deli, and they know their stuff. And they're like, for nausea, this is what we're going to use. And they have it's broken down into a science. So they do a lot of wonderful things, but it's expensive. It's not cheap. I have another question for you. Now that you're writing scripts for cannabis, where do you fall opioid wise? People, a small dose of daily opioids gave me my life back. I was able to have my colostomy bag reversed. I had all the surgeries for Crohn's, and for me, it was my last ditch attempt at life, and it gave me my life back. You're not anti-opioid, Mark, correct?
Correct. And I have a direct experience with this. Not myself personally, although I have some personal experience with opioids as well. But for me, it's clear. In 1975, George Carlin said the only side effect of cannabis is jail. Now the only side effect of opiates is jail, either for the doctor or for the patient. So opiate medications are the second safest medication for pain. And of course, the first safest is cannabis. So if cannabis can do it for you, then you're free of the obligation of having to go to your doctor, beg them for the medicine, wonder if you're going to withdraw if they cut you off, pee in a cup, and jump through all the hoops and be treated like a criminal. You can go to your dispensary and not be treated like a prized customer. So the direct experience I have, though, is with I developed this plan to wean my patients off of opiates, and 80% could. Well, that means 20% couldn't. And my patients who could not wean off of opiates for one reason or another, they were dying before my eyes. It was clear to me that they were not tolerating their wean, and that their family members would say, well, she just went straight to bed. She can't tolerate being off her opiates, et cetera. Or he's in withdrawal. He can't tolerate this. And either they couldn't tolerate the tapered rate, or they couldn't tolerate being off opiates, or they couldn't tolerate, being on less than 20% of their usual dose, et cetera. So, there are some conditions that patients just cannot get off their opiates for. And But the real thing I could tell you about this is the people who wanted off their opiates are having too many side effects, including the side effects of, negative interactions with their pharmacist, or doing the pharmacy crawl, which a lot of my patients had to do. If you have a negative side effect from opiates and you want to get off them, you're going to be successful. If they're working for you and you've tried to get off them and you can't, well, then you're not going to be successful getting off opiates. And those are my patients who suffered, died, had complications, et cetera. And it's one of the biggest tragedies in my situation that the Board of Medicine tried to take me out, claiming I was a harm to my society and community, and yet 6 of my patients are dead since they don't have access to me.
Yeah, what a shame. You wonder how did we get in this place? And when I speak with media frequently, and they'll say to me, well, you've got to agree we have an opioid crisis. I said, I'm going to agree with a few things. I said, I agree that we have an overdosing epidemic. I don't know if I know in Rhode Island what people are overdosing on. Where are we in the overdosing epidemic, Mark? As a doctor in Montana, are overdoses down because there's so much access to Narcan? Are overdoses down in Montana because prescriptions are down, or are overdoses status quo? And that's my last 3-part question, I promise.
So it's complicated response to that. I think you can say nationally for sure that overdoses are up since the prescription of prescription medications has leveled off in 2010 and has been decreasing since 2012. And in Montana, we have about a third the prescriptions now that we had 5 years ago. Overdoses have stabilized in Montana, and that may be because of less prescriptions available, but I'm also aware that we are not a hotbed of importation of fentanyl. And you can find little hotspots throughout the country where fentanyl gets in the drug system and all of a sudden 12 people die. We have not had that phenomenon in Montana yet, but there's plenty of heroin. And I think the honest response to multiple questions today is the crisis is in heroin, and heroin contaminated by illicit fentanyl, and not by Percocet. I think you can refer to statements by Dr. Klein. I just saw one of his. He just communicated that to me today. One researcher found possibly 5,000 deaths a year, not the 17,000 or 70,000 that are thrown around. And Dr. Klein estimated it the other day at 500 total. And those are probably overdoses. And my theory is that pain patients aren't going to overdose or sell their pain pills. They'd have to buy them back at 3 times the price. So, the pain patients are extremely stable. They know what they're doing with their medications, and they're not at risk, even if they are on high doses.
All right. Well, Mark, it was a pleasure having you on tonight. If you're ever in Providence, Rhode Island, you always have a place at my dinner table. I think you're a lovely person.
Oh, thank you.
So, I'm so sorry that you went through your troubles. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. You can follow Dr. Ibsen on social media. He's a pretty large presence. He's well liked by everybody. So thank you to tonight's guest. Thank you for tuning in to DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia. And as a reminder, we do protest again on May 22nd. Let's leave on this note. You keep fighting, and remember, I get my strength from your strength. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for the DPP Rally Talk Show. Subscribe to our channel at DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia on YouTube. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.